before I give myself a sprain from patting us on the back quite so vigorously, don't get me wrong, there is still a long way to go. If you compare where we are today to where we were 10 or 15 years ago, we've made some great strides. I'd like to draw some attention, though, to two closely related areas that I think we need to pay a lot closer attention to. The first is the spectre of burnout in our community. I started this talk, Richard started this morning, talking about the fact that the bulk of work on Python and Django were the result of volunteer efforts. I've almost lost count of the number of talented developers around me who have burned out or come dangerously close under the load that's been imposed by this volunteer effort. I've made no secret that I myself went through a major depressive episode last year, brought on in part by the load imposed by volunteering. I'm a lot better now, but I've still got a long way to go. This isn't a problem with an easy solution. It isn't as simple as just telling someone they don't have to volunteer anymore. Because if they're the maintainer of an even moderately successful project, I guarantee you their inbox is filled with, "Why haven't you fixed my bug?" emails, sometimes from people who should know a lot better. The greatest shocks in society occur when something we assume is plentiful and ubiquitous disappear. Petrol, electricity, clean water. If your open source project isn't planning for the day when your biggest contributor steps down or is unable to continue, your project has a clock on it. As a community, we need to institutionalize the minimization of the expectation of free labor. If you've got a project role that is going to take resources, be it material, labor, emotional energy, don't assume those resources will be available forever in boundless quantities. And if you're a free consumer of those resources, be aware of what you're consuming. If you're a commercial organization that depends on a product, and you aren't taking steps to contribute to the projects you use, I would argue you're being criminally negligent to your investors because you haven't secured your supply chain. You haven't mitigated a key risk associated with your technology stack. But it's not just about pointing fingers at bad projects or bad users or bad companies. As a community, we haven't established the conditions where companies are readily able to mitigate those risks. The free software community has spent a lot of time and effort discussing the importance of user freedoms. However, they've been almost silent on the unintended consequences of that position. When software is free as in freedom, it is almost certainly free as in beer as well, which means the task of making an income off of that software is much higher. I don't want to undersell for a moment the importance of user freedom, but to focus on user freedom to the detriment of the mental and physical health of the developers of that software is, in my opinion, incredibly negligent. How to make money from free software is a question that, unfortunately, doesn't have any good answers at the moment. As a community, we need to have a very serious discussion about the economic consequences of our decisions and how to harness the not insignificant resources that the software community has at its disposal. The good news is that there's a possibly unexpected benefit to facing this problem head on. Finding a way to pay for the resources we're consuming certainly helps to stave off burnout. But it has the added benefit that it broadens the list of people who can do the work. Volunteers, by definition, are made up by those who have the time to volunteer. If you've got a family, or you've got children, or you've got a loved one who needs care, those commitments take priority, as well they should, and they limit your ability to volunteer. You want to address diversity? Make sure that you're not just taking from the pool of people who have copious free time, which, broadly speaking, means white, middle to upper class Anglo-Saxon men aged 16 to 30. If you're someone who uses open source, don't just take. Give back in tangible ways, either with hard commitments of time or with cash that organizations like the Python Software Foundation or the Django Software Foundation can use. And this is incredibly important if you are a large organization with extraordinary resources at your disposal who derive immense benefit from open source and volunteered projects.